have that money to keep spending. If you want to keep spending $250, that's up to you. But it's important to focus and lock in. Lock in. Hey y'all, my name is Jenny and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk all about how I passed the Lcsw exam on the first try. I passed it with a score of 114 when I only needed 103 to pass. The first thing I want you to do is something I didn't do. Do you have a disability? And if you do, make sure you print out that form from the Aswb and have your doctor complete it so that way you can get extra time, snacks in between, whatever the case may be, whatever you need to make sure you're providing it to yourself. And the reason I say this is because studies have shown that if you're sitting down and taking a test that's maybe 3-4 hours long, midway through, people start to answer the questions wrong because they're either tired or whatever the case may be. So it's important to determine if you have a disability that can affect you when you are sitting down and taking that exam. The next thing, pick a study program. Are you going to buy the Therapist Development Center, Agents for Change? Are you going to join a study group? Whatever the case may be, I want you to pick one and focus on it. Don't have a million programs in front of you because that's just confusing. I started doing that and I became so overwhelmed and I was like, oh my God, I'm not gonna pass. So it was too much. So just pick one thing and stick to it. So after you've picked that one thing, make a schedule. Pull out your phone, get your calendar. Are you gonna study every day? Are you gonna study every other day? Whatever you determine. For me personally, I studied every day, at least for 15 minutes. And I gave myself a 3 to 4 month period before I took my exam. So I think my exam was in April. I started studying maybe this late December, January. A lot of the study programs out there now have a lot of pre-tests. And I think it's important to do one. Do a pretest and see exactly where you are. Obviously, that's not going to be 15 minutes the first time. So allow yourself the allotted time. So after I started with the 15 minutes every day, I started to add my 30-minute lunch break to it. So I would do 15 minutes in the morning just studying. Then in my lunch break, I would study for about 10 more minutes, then give myself a little short quiz. And after the quiz, I would review that. And that's important to kind of quiz yourself, you know. I won't say every day, but maybe once a week, just to see where you're at in the studying process. And I know I said to, you know, study for a certain amount of time, but if you find yourself losing focus, just stop studying, go for a walk, whatever the case may be, because you don't want to just sit there and stare at the paper. It's not going to be beneficial. It's not going to do you any good. So give yourself a break when you need it. It's important. So for me, at about month 2 or 2.5 of studying, I bought the Aswb official practice exam. And I think I paid about $85 for this at the time I was studying. So I went to my local library, I rented a room, and I pretended like I was going to take that exam at wherever location it was that, you know, they take your fingerprint, all that stuff. I went to my local library, rented a room, sat down, and took that test. I turned off my phone. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and I sat down and I took that exam. And I think also, I forgot to mention earlier, but it's important to put your phone on Do Not Disturb when you're studying. Of course, allow for the people in your life to reach you if there's an emergency, but it's important to really focus. So I took the official practice exam, and I think I got like a 75%. So I was really concerned. But the good thing about that practice exam is that it gives you a breakdown of why the answer is the answer. If you got it wrong, why you got it wrong, or whatever the case is. It really breaks it down. So I studied that too. So after I took that practice test, I took a couple days to just review the practice test. And I think that's really important because that's who's giving you the test. So might as well study from them. I ended up passing my test on the first time. But I'll be honest with you, I've taken tests before when my major was in education that I didn't pass on the first time because I was not taking it seriously. I wasn't studying. I was like, oh, I took all those courses. I should know it. But when you get in there, you might be anxious or whatever the case may be, and it doesn't work out. It's best to be prepared. Unless you have what I think the cost of the test was $250. Unless you have that money to keep spending. If you want to keep spending 250. That's up to you. But it's important to focus and lock in. Lock in. So I would kind of discourage you from joining too many Facebook groups about the test, because when I joined so many Facebook groups and I started getting like anxious because I was hearing from people who had taken the test 7 times, 8 times. And since I'm a terrible test taker, I began to doubt myself. I began to say, oh my God, like I've failed tests before. I'm going to fail this test again. Like I was super, super nervous. It's just hard because you want to have realistic advice from people. But if you're reading negative stories all the time, then it kind of becomes hard to, you know, kind of lock in and focus and be positive. Okay, so I'm not going to sit here and say people that have to take the test multiple times are terrible people. It's just sometimes the anxiety of it all or whatever gets the best of you and you get nervous. And that's happened to me before. And that's why I'm telling you about my tips that I took to pass this test on the first time, because the other standardized exams I have not passed. And one huge thing I would tell you is, as a social worker, if you understand the code of conduct, then you will be okay, because the code of conduct is really at the center of all of this test. It's not what you do every day, because what's in that paper sometimes may not match what you're having to do out there in reality. That's so important to remember. And I think that's why a lot of people may not pass, is because they got in the field and they're doing something that's different from what the test is telling you have to answer, because the test is black and white. Social work is living in the gray. So I think that comes into play too as to why people may not be passing for the first time. So it's really important to forget what you're doing in the field. Forget it. Just focus on what the book is saying. Go by the book. Another important tip is to schedule the test on a day that is okay for you, on a time that is good for you. So I think I picked a random Thursday and I took the day off before then, and I signed up to take the test at noon. And I was really anxious on the morning of my exam, but I made sure I had a really good breakfast of things I enjoy. I made sure that I went for a brisk walk, and I probably looked odd because it was like hot. I was like power walking throughout my complex, power walking. But that made me feel better because I worked my anxieties out. I was able to ground myself to say, hey girl, you studied for this. You're ready for this and you can do it. You will pass the exam. And I had this shirt, and I'll hopefully be able to put a picture of it. It said, I'm gonna win. And I wore my I'm gonna win t-shirt. And that was like a kind of like an extra boost for me. Since I had accommodations, I brought orange juice, I brought watermelon, and I brought some crackers and a bottle of water. But unfortunately, my bottle of water didn't meet the criteria, so I wasn't able to use it. I had to throw it away. And I just go in, I take a deep breath to soothe myself, and as soon as they let me in, like I said, take a deep breath. I write down everything that I remembered down on that paper. They give you this little dry erase board. And I noticed probably maybe like a quarter of the way through, I had to use the bathroom. So I went to use the bathroom because I had that extra time thanks to my accommodations. So after that, went to the bathroom, came back. When I realized that I reached halfway through the test, I decided it was time for me to take my break. Because like I said, study shows that at about halfway, that's when you start to not do well. So I went outside, I drank my orange juice, ate my crackers in the lobby. Because you couldn't, if you were going to somewhere that was not the restroom, you had to kind of stay into where they could see you. So I sat there and calmly ate my food. Like I said, still grounding myself, taking deep breaths. And then I went back in and I finished, I think I had 30 minutes extra, and I finished in that extra 30 minutes. Like I took the full time. And I was so nervous sitting there waiting because, like I said, I had been to, I think it was Pearson VUE. I had been to taking tests at Pearson VUE before where I failed. So I was just sitting there and I was like, oh my God, whatever. I'm just nervous. And then they print it out, and you get the printout in the front. So it was a lot of people in the lobby. I'm like, if I fail, I'm probably gonna just pass out. I'm gonna fall out. But she smiled at me, and that's kind of how I knew that I passed. Because she was probably looking at me like, this lady is odd. She's taking deep breaths. She's like eating her crackers in the lobby. But that was a big thing for me. And I remember that day, I hadn't told anybody I told people that I was studying, but I never told people the date. So I'm a little superstitious in that way, that I don't, when it's a big thing like that where it's my test, like sometimes I won't tell people. So I didn't tell anybody the date. So all I did was, when I passed, is I sent people pictures of my pass score, because I was so excited. I was so happy. It was one of the happiest times in my life, because like I said, I was so used to failing tests on the first time that I didn't want to share that with anyone. So thank you so much for watching. I really want to give you that encouragement. So let me know in the comments if you've passed this exam. Put in the comments the tips if I haven't given it. Put your own tips. Tell me your story, how you passed, because it's encouraging for other people that are studying to see that a terrible test taker like me can pass this test on the first time, then so can you. So thank you all so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye.